Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. I'm your host, Gorgeous George, and with me as always, some of the sharpest MMA minds in the biz. This week we got Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. The podcasting OG is in Las Vegas. Mike Bond, an absolute titan in MMA media. He's in Toronto. Nolan King, a true rising star in the sport. He's in Boston. On the ones and twos, it's Cold Coffee. Going into this weekend, there was a feeling from some MMA media and hardcore MMA fans that Yair Rodriguez, with a statement win, it could net him a title shot. Well, he won. Terrible circumstances, the way the fight ended, but he did win, and the technique from the armbar attempt contributed to the injury, in my opinion. I know the champ's hand needs to heal, but it's still nice to put order to a division. So, fellas, who is the number one contender at featherweight right now? What would you like to see happen? Goes, you're leading off. 4 minutes are on the clock.
This situation is kind of a crack up to me, guys, because when you look at it, everyone that's involved almost everyone wants something different, right? Ortega wants Yair again. Yair wants Volk. Emmett wants Volk. Volk wants 155. It's no secret what the UFC wants. I mean, look, every division kind of has this guy, right? Like, I feel like Josh Emmett's the guy that deserves it. I think he earned it. At 155, it's Beneil Dariush. He's that guy that kind of gets overlooked. Going in, we all said maybe with like a performance of a lifetime, we could see him. We could see Yair Rodriguez leapfrogging Josh Emmett and stealing the shot. But he didn't really do that. And so now what you're really left with is you look at a 1-fight win streak versus a 5-fight win streak. That's just really, really tough. And this fight didn't play out the way the fans wanted it to play out. It's no fault of Yair Rodriguez, but sometimes you just got to look at the stats. You got to look what's there and see what's going on, make a decision based off of that. And if we do it off that, I feel like Josh Emmett is the guy. I think he earned it. You just got to bite the bullet, UFC. You got to give it to him. But the one thing that I think the UFC has going to their advantage right now is the champion's hand, right? Maybe what I could see them doing is an interim title between Josh Emmett, Yair Rodriguez. I know we all hate that. I know we hate interim titles, but the UFC loves to do it. Mark it down. I feel like that's what's going to happen.
Oh, sour taste in my mouth, that interim title. Mike, do you agree?
I don't hate the interim title idea, actually, as much as Goes. I mean, for one, more money is involved in that scenario. Whoever wins an interim belt will get a cut of the pay-per-view when they eventually do fight the champion. But it just depends. Again, I think I said this on my post-fight matchmaker piece. The only reason they should do an interim title is if Alexander Volkanovski is 100% going to 155 to fight the winner of Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. If they're saying that is happening, then I think the window between now and his recovery and then waiting for the winner of that fight, maybe first quarter of next year, that gives enough of a gap that I'd be comfortable with them doing an interim title fight between Emmett and Rodriguez, and then you can proceed from there. Volkanovski, if he loses, comes back down. Even if he wins, he said he'd want to be active in both divisions. I think maybe this is actually a little bit of a blessing in disguise. This whole scenario, the question was, who is the number one contender? I don't think there is a real number one contender. We're just picking kind of leftovers here in terms of who makes the most sense under these circumstances. So maybe this gives an opportunity to clear things out. You have these two guys fight. Someone emerges as a true number one contender, interim champion, whatever you want to call it, and then you proceed from there from whatever Volkanovski does.
All right, Nolan, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I think that, this division right now, it's in a weird spot because I think we all know how good the featherweights are, especially the top 10 or so. But I think 5 or 6 guys are coming off of losses. So I think if you were to implement an interim title, it is that's what the interim titles are actually supposed to be for when the champion is not able to defend in this division. In this case, it's Volkanovski moving up. But it allows, I think at this point in time, it's okay because it would allow the division to kind of, have some of these guys that are in the 10 to 15 range, like the Movsar Evolev, the Bryce Mitchells, those sort of guys be able to take that next step in the meantime, have new contenders whenever the interim situation gets figured out and Volkanovski does whatever he does. I just think it would be very healthy for this division almost to have this happen. Now, granted, that's not the point of putting in an interim title. If you were to hold a gun to my head and say Volkanovski's going to fight at 145 next, you got multiple guns out now. If you were to do that to me, I would say it has to be Josh Emmett. I think nobody's got a perfect resume right now to say this guy 1000% should be next. But if given the situation, if Volkanovski is fighting at 145 next, and there's no interim title, it should be Josh Emmett.
Right on the clock. Great job, Nolan King. But Mike Bond, I gotta know, what if the hand comes back early, he's healthy, who's the number one contender? Give me a name.
I think Emmett has the better resume at this point, but I do think Yair Rodriguez is going to get it, man. I just think the fact that he's got the name value, he's been a UFC headliner 6 times, he's got the Latino and Mexican market behind it. I just think he ticks more boxes at this point, unfortunately for Josh Emmett.
All right, gotcha. All right, topic number 2, another big name from the card on ABC, former UFC bantamweight champion Miesha Tate. She came up short in her flyweight debut against lucky Lauren Murphy. How damaging was Tate's loss to her goal of being a champion, or even just fighting for the title for a title at this point? 4 minutes are on the clock, and Mike, you're going to lead off.
Very damaging, obviously. I mean, I think this was one where she could have, shoehorned her way right into the title opportunity. The stage was set. The division is barren. Valentina didn't have a great last performance, kind of lost some of the steam on her moving to 135. This was Miesha Tate's opportunity, and if we're being honest, she showed all the things we know about Miesha Tate. We know she's tough. We know she has heart. We know she's not going to give up even when she has a bloody nose and a mangled eye. She does all these things. We knew these things for the past 10 plus years when we've seen her fighting. But what may have allowed her, say in 2015, maybe she pushes through in that 3rd round, gets into it and is able to overwhelm Lauren Murphy and maybe get a finish or a dominant round to kind of put a cap on it. Seems like her game just hasn't progressed to where it needs to be to find the wins where she maybe used to earlier in her career. There was a lack of head movement. She started very slow. There wasn't a lot of diversity in her game. So I think it was kind of a clear window into Miesha Tate's ceiling right now. I don't think she's going to be the champion at 135. I don't think she's going to be the champion at 125. I'm willing to give this a tiny bit of a mulligan. It was the first weight cut. They pushed the fight back 2 weeks. An extremely tough opponent, Lauren Murphy. I'd like to see her one more time at 125, see how she looks there, and then maybe we reevaluate. But if you're asking me to judge based off solely what we saw Saturday night, I don't feel too good about her title hopes going forward.
All right. How about you, Nolan? What are your thoughts on Miesha's performance and where she fits in here?
Yeah, it's tough for me to kind of see a path to the title right now. I know crazier things have happened, and she's got a couple of options with the weight classes, but I almost feel like what we saw on Saturday was what we were kind of maybe afraid of when she came back to a certain degree. Like, a fighter that hasn't competed for a long time, who's kind of older, that the sports moved maybe a little bit past them. Then she looked great against Marion Renault. So we kind of washed away all those sort of doubts or question marks about her ability to compete. But I feel like they're kind of back now a little bit. The last 2 fights have not been kind to her. If obviously in order to get a shot at the champion, you're going to have to be able to take out the fighters that the champion beat pretty handily. And Lauren Murphy is one of those fighters. And perhaps we don't give Lauren Murphy enough credit. I think maybe that's part of this too. But yeah, I mean, you can't be getting beat up like that against any contender if you want a title shot. So she's got the name recognition. She's got the popularity. She hasn't indicated one way or another what the future will hold. I would assume we'll see her again. But yeah, man, I just don't, crazier things have happened. But right now, I think we got to erase all those title talks.
Definitely true about that, man. Crazier things have happened. She's got to be playing with some house money, right? She's already had a great career at Strikeforce UFC. And so right now, you think she's having fun, or you think she's going to dial it in and maybe turn things around?
Yeah, I don't think Miesha jumps in there unless she thinks that she can aspire to be the greatest in the division. I think that's what really drove her. And, I think Mike said it best in the fact that all the stars were aligned for her in this fight. Valentina doesn't really have that many of these types of performances. But because she did, it kind of left that door open for a style like Miesha Tate to come in and do that. So I do want to give Lauren Murphy her credit. She had a great game plan, great fight. She played to all her strengths, and even the post-fight was pretty awesome what she said. But something about Miesha just felt off, right? And we've seen this before. We saw this against Raquel Pennington. I think a lot of us were just screaming at our televisions because we know that Miesha's capable of more than that. She just wasn't really there. Now, like Mike said as well, first time at 125, not just that, but it was an extended period that she had to hang out there trying to make that weight class. I think all of that might have played a little bit, something just that made her feel a little flat, but she's got to come back. She's got to nurse injuries. She's probably got some time with the family that she's got to make up for. So we've seen her lose 2 fights in a row before, and she's come back. It's happened twice. Maybe she could do it again. But as far as a title, it's just really, really in the rearview mirror.
All right, good stuff, fellas. Moving on to topic number 3. During the UFC broadcast, UFC 280's main event was revealed. Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. They will be fighting on October 22nd in Abu Dhabi for the UFC vacant lightweight title. Was that the right call, fellas? What's your early lean? Here are the odds, by the way, if it helps out. Makhachev minus 200, Chucky Olives plus 170. Nolan, get the party started.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was either last week or the week before we talked about what they should do. And I said, I think with the UFC is always going for the biggest fights. So they're going to go for what they want money-wise, yada, yada, Conor McGregor. So I might come off as a little bit of a hypocrite here, but this is the right next fight. I mean, Islam Makhachev has earned a title fight. I'm just kind of surprised maybe that the UFC went this route. We don't always see that, but it's a great fight. I mean, stylistically, it's very intriguing to have, the grappler versus, the jiu-jitsu submission specialist against the guy with arguably the strongest wrestling in that division. So I'm really interested to see how it goes down. I think it's both on paper. It's, the guys that are the two best lightweights in the world, and we can't really complain when those sort of fights are booked. Now, as far as an early lean goes, I think that after the last fight, after Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje, I said I would never, at least in the immediate, I would not pick against Charles Oliveira again, because I think he's just made me look like a fool in that regard. So I'm going to pick Charles Oliveira. I know he's an underdog. I believe the odds came out and it showed that he's an underdog in this fight. But I think there is a lightweight champion right now, and his name is Charles Oliveira. I think that'll be the case for real once again come UFC 280.
All right, Goes. How do you feel about the news that dropped on Saturday?
I think it's the right call based on the record, based on a little bit of momentum. But it was very surprising, like the UFC's kind of gone in different routes. Every time somebody defends a belt or something, we always have to worry about Conor McGregor and that being thrown out there. And we kind of survived this one, right? I think it lays out a good plan, right? Islam gets Chucky Olives. You look at maybe Michael Chandler. It looks like maybe he'll wait out a Conor McGregor. And then you have Beneil Dariush, who arguably was in that talks as well. Now maybe you can get like a Dustin Poirier. I think for once, everything was done fair. Fighters should be happy. But as far as the matchup itself, like I think the four of us need to make a pact here. Like we cannot pick against Chucky Olives at this point. Come on, what does this guy have to do to prove how good he is at this point? To just go against him, I think would be foolish. So I gotta take him. But the one thing I'm looking forward to in this matchup, guys, is at some point that camera is gonna capture Charles Oliveira and Khabib Nurmagomedov. And boy, is that going to be fun to see if there's any type of exchange between those two, whether it's words, a look, whatever it is. I'm down, man. Just a little bit of that hope. I always have it.
All right. Mike, are we making the pact or are you leaning another way?
Man, I don't think I can pick against Charles Oliveira, but this is, the style matchup that would be the one, I guess. I mean, it's so hard to say. This is one we have to think on, but to kind of circle back to the original point, like the UFC hit a home run with this. This was the fight to make. A very special fight, an 11-fight UFC winning streak against a 10-fight UFC winning streak. I don't believe this has ever happened before. They tried to do it with Khabib and Tony Ferguson. We know what happened there. If you want to put John Jones against Daniel Cormier, Cormier had the strike force, so Zuffa winning streak, and Jones had the unbeaten run. But as far as straight winning streaks, this is something extremely unique, and we need to give Charles Oliveira, the man who I think all of us kind of consider the actual champion here, all his flowers. I know he says, I want to fight Conor McGregor. I want to do this. I want to do that. But time after time, he is bringing order to this lightweight division that has been a mess for years and years, with people taking time off, with injuries, with suspensions, with rematches, all these things. He is fighting the number one contender, the guy he is supposed to fight every time over. So, and he's winning them. So, man, so much credit to Charles Oliveira. He has been unbelievable since this kind of era that he's having in the lightweight division. And this was the correct fight to make. This is going to be, I think one of the most high-level fights we've seen in a very, very long time. And yeah, just an absolute home run here. I don't know who's going to win, and that's what makes it so amazing.
Yeah, you're right. We've been through a lot in this division, that's for sure. And how about the fact that we also found out on Saturday, Chucky Olives will get pay-per-view points for this upcoming fight, and he also got them for the one in Arizona. So, all right, I'll give a tip of the hat there.
And if this fight's canceled, it's all Mike's fault because he brought up Tony and Habib as the other time.
All right. Topic 4. Fellas, it is getting expensive to be an MMA fan with prices being raised yet again. This time it's ESPN Plus. They're the culprit. Existing price is $6.99 a month. On August 23rd, it's going to go up to $9.99 per month. The annual plans go from $69.99 per month, annual, there you go, to $99.99. This is an increase of 43%. Do you feel like the product is improved enough to warrant the change? What is your breaking point? 4 minutes are on the clock. Goes, we're coming back at you.
I think I'm at my breaking point. This is starting to be a lot, man, to be a UFC fan. You know, just an MMA fan in general. It's not just the money, it's the time too. But really, to do a price hike right now, I mean, I'm going to be the first guy that's going to need a GoFundMe just to cover the sport. It's nonstop, man. It is. It really is. And this is probably the dumbest time to do it. You know, with everything going on, like before, we used to be able to share some of this cost with some of our buddies, right? You come over for a fight party, you get one pay-per-view, I get the other one. We rotate, right? I mean, there aren't that many MMA fans that really spread out amongst your friends, but we happen to have them. We can't do that, right? Because of COVID, it's kind of hard to get together in big places with a lot of people. On top of that, gas prices are going up, food prices are going up. Come on, man, this is the wrong time to do something like this. Right now, everything that I spend just to watch the UFC is higher than a lot of my bills, man. It's higher than what I pay to care for my pets. It's higher than my car insurance. It's higher than my phone bill. It's a lot. And I would say if I had to pick a breaking point, I would say it's this one right here. This is probably the last straw for me.
Wow, Goes is taking this personal. How about you, Mike? What are your thoughts here?
So I guess we should be like clear that this was not a UFC decision. This was not, ESPN. This was a Disney decision. So like they're looking at not just the UFC fan when they're doing this. They're looking at the ESPN Plus subscriber as a whole. Obviously, me living here in Canada, I don't pay that monthly fee as far as, being able to watch all the events. As media, we can do certain things like expense cards, and there is some luxury. So I can't sit here and put my shoes or myself in the shoes of a person that's actually paying this money that they work hard for, every day towards their fandom of the sport. So I can't know exactly what it feels like to be there, but I obviously understand it. I read the comments, I see the reaction to things like this, and people are bothered by it. I mean, there's no question about it, and understandably so. I mean, I tweeted out a quote from the article we wrote about this. I mean, without, bundle packages and ESPN Plus discounts and things like that, as an MMA fan, you're looking at over $1,000 US a year to consume every element of the UFC product. And, God forbid you throw down to actually go see an event in person. That makes things even more expensive. So it's not cheap to do this. It's never really been cheap, but yeah, man, like they're trying to seemingly get every penny they can out of their consumers. And, that ESPN Plus subscriber base has built up a lot. They have obviously a big number, and they're trying to turn a profit by the end of 2023, according to, the original reporting here. And the UFC product has been a massive, massive part of the growth of that platform. But they, now at this point, it seems like they're trying to kind of turn it around. So I'm curious to see, how their subscriber rates change and all these little things. But definitely I'd be not pleased if I was subscribing to all this purely just as a UFC fan.
Jeez, yeah, the way you put it, man, it's so true. Throwing UFC Fight Pass and taking one show, and you almost need a second job. All right, how about you, Nolan King?
Yeah, I mean, Goes and Mike said what they said, and I agree with what they said. This isn't. It's confusing to think about, right? Because what Mike said about it being it's a streaming decision. We see with everything. I mean, my Netflix is going to be like $1,000 a month pretty soon. Like every year, they just bump it and bump it. So I'm guessing that's what's happening across the board. But how far are fans in the sports model being willing to push to pay this extra? I mean, other sports have. You can get outside your region games on ESPN Plus, but it's not the same. It's not the same as like if half the product or whatever is on the streaming service, and then you add pay-per-views on top of that. I mean, it's going to hit a point eventually where people just straight out can't afford it and they end up illegally streaming it. And so I think it's probably in the UFC's best interest to find out where that line is.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question though? Would it be easier for you guys if you rooted for better teams? Because if you're paying that much money and you get to see your team win, wouldn't you guys feel better about that?
How the market goes. You got to listen to what I'm saying.
Okay.
All right. Let's finish up here with here we go again, right? Dana and Nate. Another episode of the hit drama Dana and Nate Make Me Irate dropped. If you recall, a recent episode had Dana warm to Nate Diaz boxing against Jake Paul. Dana said, quote, he probably should go and fight Jake Paul. Nate followed up with a tweet, send the release. Then on Saturday, we heard Dana at the post-fight press conference for UFC on ABC3. He said, we can't hold these guys hostage. If I don't fight you 3 times a year, I have to pay you. Nate responded, in the last 9 months, I've been offered 0 fights, and I asked for 5 legitimate opponents. Obviously, there's more to it between them, and it wasn't just these 2 exchanges. These are just 2 of the more recent ones. We always track it on MMA Junkie, so check it out. But you 3 know what's up. Where do you stand, and what's the end game here? Mike, take it away. 4 minutes.
Man, I'm so sick of this story. I'm so sick of talking about this. I'm sick of the tweets. I'm sick of the false narratives presented here and there. It's just exhausting, man. Just let Nate Diaz go or book him in the final fight of this contract. I mean, he very clearly wants to test free agency. He wants to see what's out there. He did that big interview with Ariel Helwani that I'm sure everyone watching this has seen already. He made it clear he didn't, belittle the UFC in any crazy way. He just said, I want out. I want to see what's out there. Maybe I'll be back here one day even, once I kind of figure out the options. Obviously, that's boxing Jake Paul. But yeah, it's just, man, like right here, as far as I know, Nate Diaz's contract has its sunset clause before the end of the year, which means if they don't give him a fight, he's able to just walk away at that point, and kind of the final fight becomes void. And from what I've heard, they haven't been offering him an official fight since the Hamzat one last year. Dana says this thing about we have to offer people 3 fights a year. As far as I know, he hasn't been offered 1 this year. So it's just a lot of craziness going on. Obviously, we know the UFC would love to extend Nate. They'd love to keep him around for the foreseeable future for the rest of his career. But Nate Diaz seems to be tapped out on that option. So where does that leave us? Just book the man in a fight and we can move on. It's as simple as that at this point. I know they probably want the perfect opponent, someone who can build their name off Nate, yada, yada, yada. But man, we just need to get this done, and it has to happen soon.
Mike, any idea of when that sunset date is?
I heard it's probably October or November, but there's not a 100% clarity on the exact date. But I know it's before the end of the year.
All right, Nolan, are you sick of the drama too, or you can't wait for the next episode?
It's painful, man. Like Mike said, it's difficult for us to sit here and listen to the same thing over and over again. I know the media in the room on Saturday tried to kind of press Dana a little bit more, and it was met with a little bit of fire back from Dana. But to me, I guess the thing that's kind of confusing is, I'm talking to some managers in this industry who are familiar with these contracts. And the thing that Dana keeps saying about offering the 3 fights per year, they said that there's some language, obviously that they have to offer a certain amount of fights over the period of 2 years, which or whatever the terms of the deal are. But none of them said they were ever familiar with the clause that's of the 3 per year specifically outlined. So I'm interested to hear if that was just Dana's trying to do the math in his head of a 6-fight contract with 2 years on, of terms or whatever. But I would definitely like some clarity on that. It's just it seems like whenever those follow-up questions come, that they're kind of it ends up becoming a little more heated than I would think it needs to be. But we'll see what happens, man. I mean, Nate Diaz, we all love watching him fight. That's bottom line, period. So hopefully one way or another, like Mike said, if the sunset clause is coming, I guess we'll see him fight sooner rather than later, regardless of what happens.
Okay. Goes, finish things off here, man. What are your thoughts on this drama going on?
I think the ESPY should add a category for best villain. I think both of these guys should probably be involved. I mean, you hear the Diaz brothers when they speak, they're not always the voice of reason. Things aren't always clear. But Dana White isn't really misunderstood either. We kind of know where he stands. He's going to protect his business, right? And he may not be doing evil things like we all say, but he's probably not doing the fighters any favors. He's definitely not going to do Nate Diaz a favor. So honestly, the one thing that stands out for me here that I think is very clear is one guy says he wants to fight. And he's a guy that we all love to see fight. And he's a guy that people constantly call out on Twitter. So it can't be that hard to get this man a fight. Get him the damn fight and get this thing over with, because we're tired of hearing about it. But the last thing I do want to add on this is, look, if he does go and he fights Jake Paul, whether he wins or loses, I don't see it being the end of his UFC career. I honestly think he could come back and fight Conor McGregor at some point. Like, really, how big of a life is there outside past that boxing matchup? I mean, I think you can make a lot of money coming back and fighting Conor, so you never know.
True. Never thought of it that way. But yeah, Nate versus Poirier, for crying out loud. I mean, they've been dangling that one for the longest time. Who doesn't want to see that one? All right, fellas. Great job. Knocked it out of the park. I liked you three better than last week's three. Don't tell them I said that. A lot of stuff going on this week. De Ridder, man, keep an eye on that guy. Won championship. You got Bellator, man. They got some guys there, Lima and Jackson. They're trying to get in there to be part of the welterweight title picture. And of course, the UFC, they're off in London, man. So lots to pay attention here on MMA Junkie. Keep it locked on MMA Junkie. Get that free app on all smartphones and tablets. And congrats to Joseph Boza. He's the winner of last week's contest for best comment here in the comments section. I'm going to send him a Brian Ortega bobblehead. We're out of here, folks. We'll see you next week on the Spinning Back Clique.